Welcome to Chat with Leaders. Our mission is to give resilient servant leaders a platform for sharing the inspiring things that they're doing to lead their teams, customers, and themselves wisely. Today, I have the pleasure of being joined by Rod Hames, the entrepreneurship teacher over at Cruz Middle School. Hey, Rod.
Hi, Chris.
Now, you've had a lot of changes happening to you over the last month and a half or so with, this influx of digital learning days. And so, transitioning, working from home, dealing with students that are all remote. I want to kind of dive in a little bit on the teacher aspect of this. I know you're one of the more technological teachers at your school. I'm curious as to how you've been partnering up with other teachers to kind of not get through, but just to work through these new technological challenges that y'all have had.
Yeah, Chris, it's certainly been a challenge, but it's been one of those things that keeps me fueled and fired up and passionate about what I do, because I always love to look for the challenge, look for what on the horizon is changing. Of course, we're all now forced to be in the change mode. At Cruz Middle School, since I'm the only business and computer science teacher, my curriculum is pretty much my own. And working with the other teachers right now is not primarily what I'm doing. Now, when I'm back at school, I'm working side by side with some of the teachers, but right now I was called on by the county to work directly with the other middle school business education teachers in helping them bring their A game to this online learning. Now, I'll be honest with you, I'm not perfect at it, far from it. But I am doing some innovative things in the classroom, and part of it is because of the setup. I have a classroom setup where the desktops are all spread out, and the kids would go over, and I would feel like they were all on their own little island. So it would almost, in some ways, teach remotely by creating some screencasts for them, recording videos in what we might call the flipped classroom, where they would watch a video and then be able to ask questions after the video being taught via a video. And so I was asked to create a lesson, and I decided to do one on Python and send that out to my colleagues across the county to help them maybe teach programming language like Python, but do it via Zoom.
That is really interesting. And I know with your students that are going through all these new screencasts that you're creating and kind of adjusting to this different, we'll call it lifestyle, you are highly relational with your students. I mean, you have for years stood at your door in between all of your classes, shaken. I don't know. Not a grammar person. You have shaken everybody's hand. You've greeted them by name for a long time. And just that little touch point at the beginning of every class, I mean, it's huge for students. They feel valued, even if they don't realize it.
Absolutely.
So how are you kind of bridging that digital distance and still maintaining and trying to curate those relationships during this time now?
Well, it's a great question, and it's one that's not going to be perfectly answered by saying, "Oh, you can mimic all of that, and you can do all of what you're doing online," because you can't. Because you can't mimic it perfectly. But what you can do is you can teach certain aspects. One of them, in particular, that I'm trying to do right now is I'm trying to maintain good eye contact. Obviously, I'd love to reach out and shake your hand and have that physical proximity is very important in any relationship that you're building. But the windows to the soul is through the eyes, and to be able to read and to build trust, there is a way of doing that. And one way that I'm doing that is in a medium that many of the kids already are very familiar with, which is TikTok. There's a great program that educators use called Flipgrid. Very similar platform where you get a minute and a half, 2 minutes, whatever the teacher assigns, and you give a child an opportunity to go onto that platform and pitch their business idea. So there are apps out there, but in addition to that, you also have to teach the students how to do use their vocal tones, and to be able to be a good speaker. And this just happens to be a really cool app to be able to teach the kids how to build relationship through speaking.
And it's a completely different, like talking to somebody through a video camera is completely different than talking to somebody in person. It's a little bit hard to convey your, I talk with my hands all the time. And so it's very hard, especially when I have like microphone setups and things like that, to talk with my hands so I don't smack anything that's sitting in front of me. And how you position your camera also makes a big difference as well. Like, I've seen some people that, their laptop screens are pointed down and you can see their keyboards while they're typing. And how you present, you have to be almost just a little extra buttoned up, and a little more fluid when you're doing these videos as a student and you're learning how to present yourself. It's a whole different medium for that communication.
I 100% agree. And it's one that's evolving in the sense that we have to come up with ways to help the students, especially a 11, 12, or 13-year-old student, to understand about the distractions of having your cat run across your lap, or possibly what's in the background. Oh my word, what is that? And the distractions that go on when you're on video, even setting up, like you said, the camera and audio, being able to hear the students. Just there's all kinds of little nuances that really need to be taught, because they still build trust and relationship with the other student, with other people that you're online with. So there's some things that are going to have to be taught and used, but they all go back to building good, solid relationships.
Going back to, you were talking about the video and trying to communicate your skills through video and whatnot. One of the people that I know, I'm actually one of the other co-hosts on the show, Jeff Bond. The company he was at before was a recruiting firm. And one thing that they were working on implementing is, how do we get these recruiters, or not these recruiters, but these people who want to be hired, how do we get them in the hands of a potential employer quicker, and to kind of help bridge the gap before, you have that initial conversation. And so one of the things they were doing is they were bringing in all their candidates to their office, and they were having them record minute and a half, 2-minute little intro clip about their personality, what they do, a little bit about their work experience. And that little short 90 to 120-second video clip would be blasted out to all the businesses that are a part of that recruiting firm's network. And so we're kind of tacking on this skill rather quickly of being able to present yourself well on a video camera, as well as being able to present yourself well in person. And so being able to hone down both of those skill sets is super important in this day and age. Another question I wanted to ask you about is kind of the parent side of this. I know as a teacher, you part of who you deal with on a regular basis as the parents. How is that interaction kind of changing, and how are you building relationships there with them?
Wow, what a great question, Chris, because as you probably already know, and most of your viewers know, that partnerships are such a vital part of whatever you're doing, wherever you're at. You're never on an island, and it's never more important to engage with students than to make sure that most important partnership that you have is with the parents. So I am finding myself more and more directly communicating with the parents more often. Now, again, communication's one of the key components of every leader's life, but you can also overdo it. So I'm very careful in my emails, particularly my emails now, and I've always careful myself with the emails to be very careful about the tone that I'm portraying, because one of the things I want to do now is I want to make sure that in this crazy time we're living in, is that they see the compassion, and they see that I'm really trying to be flexible with their child, but I'm also trying to communicate what the expectations are, and that they haven't changed. So I'm using a Google Voice number to communicate with parents. I'm constantly giving out that Google Voice number so that parents feel like they can pick up the phone and call me.
So they're calling.
But I'm also doing the Zoom.
That's awesome. So you actually gave them a phone number so they can pick up the phone and call you and talk to you about the questions that they're having?
Right, because the way the phone call comes in is through the app. So I'm protecting them, that I do not have their cell phone number. Neither do they really have my cell phone number, because when I dial out through the Zoom app, it doesn't show me their real. It just comes up with some kind of a voice over IP number, and calls them. And then when they call me, they don't see my actual cell number. They just see the fictitious, I guess you could call it fictitious, but the number that's been assigned to my Google Voice.
That's awesome. That is a really, I don't know too many teachers, but I haven't heard of anybody actually getting a phone number so that parents can call them, whenever they want. Obviously, you have the ability to kind of turn off those notifications, which is great to help, with your work-life balance. To close things out, what is the one thing that you want to tell people that during this time that you feel like would be good for them to kind of keep in the back of their mind?
Well, probably one of the things that's going to be talked about more and more is this idea of the students and the parents and the families going through really what amounts to a trauma. Social emotional learning is going to be such a big part of what our discussion is as we go forward. There is not one family, who couldn't say that they've been affected in some way by this, in something. And it could be as minor as missing a trip that you're going to get on a cruise. And it could be as major as losing a family member. The point I'm going to make is that we all have to portray, as far as teachers go, an idea of grace, an idea of forgiveness of some of the grades that are going on, some of the learning activities. This is a very, very small part of their learning. But it's more importantly, it may be even the most important part of their learning is to be able to be forgiving, have high expectations, but having grace, it would be the answer to that. We have to have grace for these families. You just don't know what everybody's going through.
Just empathy in general. Like I've noticed that as doing more video calls and things like that with people, just the people that are not as put together as they normally would be if they're sitting in their office. People understanding that the dogs bark sometimes, the babies cry sometimes. That's a part of life. It happens. It's okay. We can still continue doing what we're doing, even though we have these different types of distractions around us while we're at the home. So Rod, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate it. And I look forward to future conversations. Oh, actually, I should ask you, what's a good way for people want to get in touch with you? Maybe some other teachers that might be listening that might want to bounce some ideas off of you. What's a good way to get in touch with you?
The best way to get in touch with me is through my website. It's mrham, as in Mary, es.org, mrhames.org.
Awesome. That is fantastic. Well, until next time, we will talk to you a little bit later.
Thank you, Chris.